Morning, guys. It's Romano here from Bonsai with Romano. Hope you guys are doing well. Just wanted to give you guys a quick heads up. I'm working out of my garage today, so this is where I'm normally situated. Sorry, I just have to drop. See, that's in the shot right now. Yeah, so I'm working from my garage today. I'll be showing you guys how I do my winter pruning today. So I'll start off with this tree. I have four more trees that I'll be working on. So once I'm done with that, you guys will see the difference. The only reason that so there's a lot of debate about when you should be doing pruning on your deciduous trees. So some guys suggest that you do it after they started showing some new signs of growth. But I'm under the impression that I like to do it when the trees are dormant, because then you can actually see the structure of the tree. And I prefer doing winter pruning because once the growing season starts, there's a lot of other things that will need your attention, like repotting trees, especially celtices. So the best thing for me is to get as much work done as possible, because having a full-time job from 9 to 5 and then spending time with your family and then working on trees, it's a bit of a juggling act. So what I normally do is I try to get as much work done as far ahead of time as possible, so that I can actually get to all the work in the bonsai enclosure instead of leaving it for the next available opportunity. That also helps you to get ahead of the work. The reason why I prefer to do winter pruning is all the leaves are off the deciduous trees. So as you can see on this tree, there's no leaves, there's only brown leaves left on the tree, so that's all leaves that should have fallen off. So that also gives you time to clear off all the leaves that's still hanging onto the tree. And then also what you can do is remove all the shoots that you couldn't see in when the tree was in full bloom. So now you can actually go into the tree, look at the structure, remove the tiny twigs that's been growing from the base of the tree, and make sure that the ramification is equally spread and that there's no branches that has more than two shoots coming off the same point. So what I'll do now is I'll just quickly start removing all the leaves, and then I'll go into pruning the tree, like taking off all the unnecessary growth, and then I'll move on from this tree to the other tree. You guys should know that if you've been following me for quite some time, this tree's been with me for almost 3 years now. I bought this tree at an auction a while ago. I'm going to be repotting this tree into a bigger container this year to help it grow a bit faster. I'm happy with the canopy. The only thing is just there's a lot of work still that needs to be done on the roots. So I'll be planting it into a deeper container so that I can start working on those roots, because there is big cuts that's been made to this roots and it doesn't look nice. So I'm going to graft on some roots, and then I'm going to let the root system get a bit more established before I plant it back into a bonsai pot. So I'll just start removing all the dead leaves from the tree. Just remove them. You can remove them by hand, but I'm just scared I'm going to damage the bark around that. So it's easier just to use scissors just to cut off all the unnecessary growth. Okay, it's off. And as you guys can see, the trees don't look too bad without their foliage, and you can once you see the entire structure, it's better to work on the tree, because then you know exactly where are all of the leaves that you should remove and where are the twigs that you should remove. You can also see if there's any problems within the tree that needs attention. That's a good time to work on it, especially now during winter, because this is one of those branches where it's growing into another branch. So then just trim that off, and if something grows from a place that it shouldn't, you can just remove that. Yeah, so I'm just removing all the unnecessary branches now as well, anything that's growing down. growing in positions where it shouldn't be growing. Anything is too long. So now you can also see when branches are going to be growing onto each other. So now you can actually do your directional pruning and make sure that there's an bud in that direction that you want your tree to grow, and you can easily redirect any unnecessary buds. Okay, so this is a timely process, so it doesn't help you rush through this because you want to do it properly and you want to make sure that you do it right, because this will put your tree a few steps ahead. It will help you with the development of the tree, and also it just saves you a lot of time during the first part of the growing season, especially because I'm going to be repotting this tree in June. Sorry about that, there's a lot more noise in my garage than it is in my office in the house, but yeah, I just thought I'm going to move you guys out into the garage so that you guys can see where I normally work. So I normally work from my garage. So yeah, I can work as late as I want to because my office is situated right next to my bedroom. So everybody needs to be quiet in the house. So I just thought I'll give them the week off, just move everything outside. But now obviously we're competing with the cars because I'm right next to the highway. So I do apologize for the noise every now and then because there's a traffic light not too far from where I live. So yeah, guys speed down the highway and then they notice that there's a traffic light not too far, and then yeah, it's just screeching and braking noises. So hopefully it doesn't interfere too much. You guys are more than welcome just to send me messages just to tell me if it's a big disturbance. Otherwise I'll just keep on streaming from here from now on. I can probably just add in some padding so it doesn't pick up too much of the outside noise. Yeah. So you guys will see that I've kind of moved away from doing the interviews for the while now. Yeah, I just started working on a new project, and it's taking up a lot of my time. So I'll probably for the next month or so just be doing basic work on my bonsai and streaming that every Saturday. The reason, yeah, it's taking up a lot of my time, and I'm working like 16, 18 hours a day. So it doesn't make sense for me to gather all the information and schedule interviews with other bonsai enthusiasts for the time being. So as soon as that changes, I'll let you guys know, and then we can start with the interviews again. I know it was great having more people on the stream and talking to other bonsai enthusiasts, but for the time I'm just going to put a hold on that just until I get settled into my new project and it starts taking up less time. Then I'll be able to do the interviews again, because obviously you have to send out the questions, schedule times for the live stream, prepare yourself and prepare the person that you're going to interview, and how everything works, and set up videos and stuff like that. So it's a bit time consuming for now, but as soon as we get back onto that, I'll let you guys know. So I'm done with these two branches at the back here. I'll turn the tree around now, then you guys can see exactly how that works. The other thing that I also just wanted to mention is the nice thing about pruning the tree when all the foliage is off is once you start pruning the tree, you can actually see how the tree is going to develop in future, and then you'll see that there are a few dry branches that's been covered with foliage. So when you're trimming them off, you can actually see that they were dry, but now what you can do is you can direct new growth to that areas, because obviously they were shaded out, so they died off because they didn't receive any sunlight. But trimming in winter, when there's no foliage on, you can see the entire tree, you can see the structure of the tree. And I must say, there's not a lot of work on this tree, or that I have to do on the ramification. Uh, but you can just remove all the lengthy growth, because once that first shoots comes out in spring, they have long internodes, so then you have to immediately cut them back, so that you can get the nodes to be closer to each other, the buds. So doing this now just makes it so much easier when the first set of growth starts shooting out. Here in the Western Cape, most of these trees start waking up, the celtuses start waking up in July, and that's also when they get repotted. So if I look at the date now, it's the 20th, so they will start waking up almost in a month's time from now. So by cutting these off now, it also gives them time to heal over before they start growing. So there is a lot of theories going around of guys saying that if you trim trees now and they start growing immediately in spring, what will happen is that the growth will actually spill out at the open ends because it's not sealed off properly. But I haven't had big setbacks if I trim trees in winter. So for now I'm continuing with that. If I do see that the trees suffer certain setbacks after I've trimmed it in winter, I will stop and try new things. As you guys know, I'm like trying new ideas, so I'm all for new opportunities and trying new techniques. So if something new pops up, I'll use it. But for the time being, this seems to work 100%, and my trees like it. I can't speak for them, but I can see that they react well to it. So I'm going to continue with that. No problem. So this part's all done. So yeah, very, very time consuming work, but it needs to be done. On the bigger trees it does take a bit more time than on the smaller trees. And then I also must say that there are some of my deciduous trees that still have leaves on them. So some of them are still green. So that's probably because some of them were trimmed too late. So then they keep their leaves, which is not a bad thing, but they can suffer setbacks if the leaves stay on there too long, because they're not taking up too much sap now, or too much water. So if there's water in and the temperatures drop below a certain point, it might freeze in the tree and that tree might die. But for now it's fine, there's no problems, everything seems to be working fine. What I also do now is I'm also cutting back all the parts of growth that I cut back on the previous year that has little stumps. So I'll remove all those stumps just to make sure that the trees look nice and that there's no damage on the bark, because obviously when you leave those stumps it just looks ugly. So you have this nice curve in the trunk and then you have a stump on the side. So they do die off eventually, but I just aid in that process because I don't like that stumps where you cut off a previous time you prune the tree. There are people that just say that you should just leave it and the tree's going to die back a bit, but I just don't like stumps, so I cut them off completely the next time that I trim the tree, because then I can see exactly where it needs to be trimmed. And then also I try to remove all the straight branches, because all the other branches have nice movement in them. So I cut it back to a node that's going into a different direction, and that just aids the tree in the future, because then that bud will become the next direction that the branch is growing in. So that's a very useful tip. So make sure that all your branches have more or less the same flow. not one straight branch and the other one is curved, and yeah. So I'll just turn it like that so you guys can see this side of the trees now. This branch all the way up until here is trimmed, so I'm going just around the tree and then I'll go up to the apex. Just like working in a circle with this tree, because there's no first, second and third branch because it's styled in a broom style. So it's easier just to go around the tree and then just move up as you turn the tree around. You can see on the side that's been trimmed that the tree looks a bit more structured than on this side because there's a lot of lengthy growth on there. So it's like compacting the tree a bit more. So with deciduous trees, the development is a bit longer than with evergreens. But the process you can see, or the progress you'll see over a few years. So each time that you're trimming the tree, that's a step in the development of the tree. So deciduous trees, I like deciduous trees because it's just that long process of refining the tree and knowing that every step that you're taking is actually part of the development of the tree. And if I look back at some of the trees that I did 3 or 4 years ago, and it does feel like monotonous work. You're doing the same thing over and over and trimming back to the second bud, removing the foliage that's growing down, and when you're doing it, it doesn't look like it's actually creating any foundation in the tree. But if you take photos of the tree now and you look back at it like 4 years from now, you can actually see that the steps that you take now has a impact on how the tree develops later on. So it gives you that pleasure of looking at the tree a few years from now, and it's like, wow, this is way better than I thought it would be. And this just gives you some peace of mind that everything that you're doing now is has a part to play in the tree's development. One thing that I just want to mention with that is, like, if you have 1 or 2 trees and it's the first time that or it's the first growing season that you're working on your trees, it's kind of difficult to see the picture and look back at it and say, okay, this is how the tree is going to look a year from now. But I can guarantee you that everything that you do on the tree has an impact on the tree's life. And there is a reward at the end of the day. So that's why it's nice to have a few trees to work on at different stages of development, so then you can see exactly how you work on different trees at different stages of development, and that just gives you a bit more joy than working on something that's, say, if you're growing something from seed or from a cutting, some of the guys like that route. Takes a bit longer and the process is longer, but if you have a few developed trees and you work on them, you can actually see that everything that every part of the tree has been developed over a period of time. So it's very, very nice to look back at that. Okay. Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, you guys are more than welcome to send them along. I'll answer them, especially if it has anything to do with winter pruning and how that works. My daughter mentioned that this week she'll also be part of this team helping me again, but obviously she's been busy all morning, so she couldn't help me now. But she also has a few trees that she's been working on. So I like using her in some of the demos, and she has her own trees that she works on. So we work together on all of the trees. It just helps me because whenever I go away on conferences, then she can just always assist my wife to water the trees and take care of the trees, so I know the trees are in safe hands when I'm off. for business. Okay, that's those ones. Let's move on to the next side. It's also now during winter a good idea to look at all the trees in the enclosure and make sure that they receive enough water. Because as I walked through my enclosure this morning, it rained last night, so I didn't check all my trees this morning. But when I went through the enclosure, I saw that there were a few trees that were dry. And as you guys can recall from a previous video that I did, I mentioned that I'll be moving the trees around, and some of them were under the roof or protected from the rain, especially the deciduous trees. And I actually found that there were one or two of the ficuses on closer to the wall that was also a bit dry. So I gave them water before I started the live stream just now, just to make sure that they don't dry out. So when the trees dry out, it's fine. You must just make sure that it's not bone dry and just that the soil is still damp and not completely dry. Because once it's completely dry, you will damage some of the finer hair roots, and those are the ones that take up all the nutrition. So the thicker roots in the pot, it's just there for stability and keeping the tree upright and stable. But the smaller, younger, tender roots, those are the ones that take up all the nutrition. And if those dry out, you're going to have problems with the tree. And that is also why we try and encourage the growth of new, smaller roots in bonsai tree by trimming back the roots when we're repotting them. So that's just something that you can keep in mind during winter. If you're from a different region, you guys obviously not in winter now. I know that some of the guys, I watch a lot of the YouTube videos on bonsai, and the one guy that I'm following is actually, he's in America now. I shared one of his videos not too long ago on my Facebook. It was just one of his podcasts that he did, and they say it's peak of summer now in America, and they're reaching very high temperatures. So it's, if it's summer now for you guys, then obviously watering is the main focus. Watering and feeding would be the main focus for you. For us on this side, it's just pruning, preparing soil mixtures, and making sure that we have everything ready so that we can go into the growing season prepared. Turn it back some. Oh, and then there's some good news. So I've just heard now, I spoke to my wife earlier this morning, and she mentioned that the place where the Botanical Gardens or the Bonsai Heritage Collection of South Africa is hosted opened their doors for people to walk through the gardens again. So if you're on this side closer to Bubbling Oyster, you guys are more than welcome to go visit the farm. I don't know if you can actually go to the bonsai side. I can actually go this week and see if it's possible to look at the bonsais over there, just to give you guys an update on how it looks, because I know a lot of people were worried about the collection and how it is now, and I know that there were a couple of photos sent through on the WhatsApp groups that I'm on, just showing that the guys are still working on the trees and they're doing well and recovering, and the trees are actually looking very great because they're not getting pruned as often. But they get enough feeding, they get enough watering, so if they're doing well. I just want to give you guys a quick update on that. I'm almost done with this tree. Okay, I see I've got a question over there. Hi, France. I see France is online. Nice to see you. So France is one of the guys at the Bonsai Club that I'm at. So I'm just glad to see that some of those guys are on the stream as well. I'm glad you guys are watching. Yeah. That puts a lot of pressure on me, because now there's a lot of guys that's looking at the stream that actually knows what's going on. So now I have to watch everything that I'm saying. Just kidding. So yeah, so this tree is almost done. And then I'll move over to the other trees on the other side. Okay. Oh, sorry, I just hear my one dog's barking now. I do apologize for that. Okay. So I also have other great news. So it looks like they're installing fiber in Stellenbosch now. So hopefully I'll be able to do Zoom calls and stuff again early in the once that's all done. Because now I actually kind of just also stopped with that because um, the internet's just too slow. I have a router, but it's not good enough for the live stream and the interviews, especially now in winter. For some reason, it looks like the internet's slower on my side. It's probably because there's more people at home. But that's that. Okay, so that's all done on that side. I just have to do this side and this side over here. I'm just removing all of these so that I can see that they. But for some reason, there's a lot of dead branches in between, especially on the tips. So it might be that this tree, just before winter started, because I'm looking at the soil now, and the soil is very damp, but it might be that the tree suffered some dryness during the period just before winter, because there's a lot of dead twigs in between. Just remove. I just touch them and they all just break off. So it could be that the tree actually suffered just before winter, because it's very, very dry. Some of the twigs, it's all of the thinner ones, so it's not too bad. Just removing them as we go along. Okay. That's it. So these smaller cuts that you actually do, you don't have to worry about applying any sealant or anything like that. It's when you remove bigger branches that you need to worry about sealing them off, because obviously they can rot, and if the big cuts don't dry off, or if they dry off, it's just going to damage your bark, and you're going to have to put some sealant on there, because the trees can rot and you can get infections on those side. So these smaller twigs, when you're trimming them back, you don't have to worry about applying sealant, but especially when you guys are doing huge cuts, just use bonsai sealant, because what I see, especially on these type of trees, which is the Witstinker, the Celsus africana, if you apply that pink rose care sealant on these trees, they actually don't like it, so it changes white, and then then it becomes invisible, and then it has this black bacteria that actually builds up on the inside. So I don't like that sealant on this specific type of trees. So I have been using that in the past, but I see bonsai paste works better on these deciduous trees when you're making cuts, because it's more like a putty and you can apply that over the sealant. The other one that I've used now in the past, the rose care sealant, the one that actually cares for fungi, it makes a black fungus that grows on the inside of that sealant. So, and also when that sealant becomes wet, it becomes like this white color, and it looks ugly on your trees. So especially if you are looking at taking trees to shows and stuff like that, that's not a good look on a tree. So I won't use those type on deciduous trees. I do use them on some of my other trees where you can't see where I made the cuts, but especially on deciduous trees during winter, it just leaves an ugly sight on the trees. So try and remove that and apply cutting paste, bonsai cutting paste, on the actual wound and not the rose care sealant, because that doesn't work. Let me just see. Okay, it's not here. I'm just probably left it inside. Just thought it was on the shelf over there, but it's not here. Then I could have actually shown you the paste that I'm talking about, but it has this pinkish color, and I don't like that on my trees. The paste is a nice brown color, So that works way better. Okay, so that's all done. So I'm basically just going through this tree now again. So in that entire part there is done. As you can see, there's no more dead leaves or anything on there. It's only on this side that I'm just going through quickly. And then I have a few more trees. So I'll stop the stream at 11. I see it's half an hour already. But I'll continue cutting the trees. So if you guys are interested in watching me go on to the other trees, you guys are more than welcome to stay. It's just, yeah, I know it's not the most interesting seeing a guy prune his trees. Yeah, I just thought I'll just go live every Saturday at 10 just to give guys something to watch at during lockdown. Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out which ones to remove over there. And then there's a lot of these long. Okay, so just a quick heads up. So I see here's one or two long shoots. So when you get to the ramification of the tree, so you always want to have is you want to have a thick base, and as the tree comes out to the tip of the branch, you want the thickness of the branch to gradually decrease. The reason for that is your smaller branch, the ends of the tree should always be the finest. So I see here's one or two parts of this tree where it actually thickened up a lot. So what I normally do is, it's just a suggestion, is just cut off that thick branches, and you guys don't have to worry about that. These trees grow out very easily. So what will happen is then you just remove all the thick branches just to make sure that you have those nice, delicate, fine branches, because you want your ramification to look as natural as possible. And if you have all of these, if you cut the tree back regularly, you'll see that the branches start becoming thick, especially on these trees at the tips. So then I just cut it back a bit more, further than I usually cut it back, and that just gives it time to grow some new thinner branches in that places. So I hope that makes sense. So yeah, just trim the tree back a bit further, and the new finer ramification will come out. It will take some time to get it back and fine and well refined, but at least then you guys have something to work with. So it looks like if you're doing something like that you're trimming the tree back too far, it will actually damage the tree, but you guys really don't have to worry about that. It's all part of the development. So yeah, once the tree is fully established and the ramification is all fine, every now and then you will actually have to trim the tree back a bit further than normal. That just gives the tree some space to grow in some new finer growth, and it also just balances out the foliage and the root ratio. Because if you have a lot of fine roots, your tree will use a lot more of the water available in the soil. So trimming back also helps the tree with its health, especially because there's only so much roots in the pots. Okay, so this part should be all done. Just double checking that everything is done on there. There's a few more of these ugly stumps that I just have to remove. There we go. That's all done on this side. There we go. So yeah, I'm just going to remove this because it doesn't look nice. So it might just look like I'm just trimming back these, but there is some order to this madness. Just trying to figure out how I want these branches to grow in future. Just making sure that they don't grow into each other. That's fine. Let's remove that one. Okay. So that seems to be done on this side. Just trimming back these. And there's a few ugly twiggy branches over here. Okay, that seems to be this tree. Just checking all the. There's a few stumps over here. Okay. Yeah, so sometimes getting your scissors in is difficult, especially if you don't. I actually lost my longer scissors. Um, don't know where I put them when we moved. We moved a year or so ago, and after that, I couldn't find my scissors anymore. So I just haven't bought myself some new ones again. So now I'm using these short shears just to get to all the branches. But this longest is bonsai shears is actually way better, and you can get in there without having to move anything out of the way. Okay, so that's it for this tree. This tree is all done. I'm just going to move it to the side. Actually, just put it on the ground, and then I'll bring over the other ones. So let me get one of the newer trees that I've been growing. So this is a tree that I bought not too long ago. Actually bought it in Claremont. So, I went to go visit my cousin, and I drove past the nursery. And the one thing that I always do is whenever I'm passing a nursery, I just pop in there to see if they don't have any small trees available. And I found this little guy. And it's only been 2 years that I've been working on this tree. And as you can see, the ramification, it's starting to form the foundation of a new tree. So what I normally do is, in the past, once I got new trees from the nursery, I would style the tree, trim the tree, and repot it into a bonsai container or into one of these. Let me just grab one of these, into one of these shallower containers. But recently, I spoke to one of the guys that I normally visit up in Somerset West, and he mentioned that I should just leave the trees in these nursery containers for as long as possible, develop the tree as far as you can in this, because then you still have a lot of soil that the tree can use, style the tree, trim the tree, do whatever you want to, and then once you're close to finalizing the structure of the tree, you can then replant it into one of these shallower so I just normally use these seedling trays. They're not that expensive, and I buy a few of them every year, and I plant my new trees into these containers. They're a lot more economical than buying a lot of bonsai containers. And also, once I've developed them into something that looks like a bonsai, I normally sell them off. So I don't keep these trees too long. So I like buying celtuses. They develop easily and they grow quite well. So what I do is I develop them for a year or two, and then I would sell them off to potential clients, or if I know about people that are starting to grow bonsai and they have interest, I would advise them to buy these trees first and work on them, because they're inexpensive trees, but they give you all the foundation that you need to develop your skills before you start working on trees that are a bit more established. So I have quite a few of them. I think on my website there's 3 or 4 of them that I've put on there for sale. So if you guys are interested in one of those celtus trees, you're more than welcome to visit that, and then you can have a look at those trees. So if you guys don't know, my website is www.bonsaiwithromano.com, and it's all under the sales tab. It says local sales. You can see the trees that I have available for sale. It's not a lot of trees, but I do really wait for the trees to look like they nice potential bonsai before I start selling them off. It just makes a lot more sense than trying to sell something that doesn't look well established. So I'm just going to do the same with this tree. I'm just going to remove all the twigs and branches that's growing out at the wrong places. See. So this tree has a lot more finer growth. So you guys can see it growed a lot more than the previous tree because it has a lot more growing medium to work with. But the same principle applies. You just look for buds that grow in the direction that you want the branch to go, and then you just trim it just above that. and that just helps you get and shape the tree. You guys will see that this tree will start opening up the structure. And what I do is with the branches that's lower down, and if I want them to grow out a bit more, I don't prune them back. So I prune back everything from the second, third upwards, because I don't want those branches to thicken up anymore. And then I'll leave the branches at the bottom a bit longer. So when the new growth starts coming out, that branches will thicken up immediately, because obviously they have more growth, more length. And these branches at the top were pruned back, so those buds will not sprout as fast as the others lower down. So that's also something to keep in mind. Like when you're trimming your trees, you don't have to trim the whole tree at once. You can do it in stages. So I normally look for trees, for branches that I don't want to be removed, or branches that I want to elongate, and then I don't trim on those specific parts of the tree. I just prune everything else, let that grow out, and then once that's grown out, I come back and if I still need that to elongate, I just trim the rest of the tree and leave that. So that's how I develop my trees, and that's just a way to help you develop your trees faster than by trimming everything at once, because then everything starts sprouting at the same time. So if you do it in stages, actually helps you on the development side. Okay, so I'm just going to trim all these back. And it's always a nice thing to just, if you're trimming certain branches on the tree, make sure that you actually have that branch in your hand, because slip-ups do happen, and you can remove branches that you don't actually want to remove if you're not careful. And on deciduous trees, those mistakes can be costly, because it will take you quite some time to grow back a new branch in that specific section. So I like trimming back these Celtis trees quite hard. They tend to grow very easily in our climate, so I like them as deciduous trees because they actually give you something to work with. And so if you find a tree on your side that you see that works well in your climate, it would be first prize to work on those trees. Okay, that's all done. And as you can see, this tree is way easier to trim because there's not a lot of branches on it. But the same principles apply. Remove all the ugly stumps. Make sure you create movement in your tree. And whenever branches are growing back towards the tree, you can just remove those branches because they're not going to serve any purpose if they're growing back towards the tree. And then here's a few dead branches that you can remove all the dead foliage as well. Okay, that's done. And then also one thing to keep in mind while you're trimming the trees is just like this tree has 1, 2, 3 leading branches or trunks. So make sure when you're trimming them that your apexes are all at different heights, and if not, you can always trim one of them back, or just leave some of the growth on one just to let it extend a bit more. But make sure that the apexes are all at different heights, and that the trunks are all different widths, because you don't want it to look weird. Because if they're all the same height, it's not going to give you any nice perspective, and it just looks like a topiary tree cut straight. So yeah, just make sure. And you can also remove any branches that you see that's crossing over its other, or they're coming out too close to the trunk or too close to the edge of the tree, of the branch. And like these ones are growing towards each other, so I'm just removing those closer to the tree and then leaving the rest so that they can actually grow. And here's a few that's branches that's going in different directions, but they're crossing each other. So I'll just remove some of them. Make sure that they go in all the right directions. There's one there. Okay, I might just shorten up this as well. Yeah. Also, I must say the one bonus point for working in the garage today is I don't have to sweep up the carpet, because when I work from the office and inside the house, then I have to clean the carpet, and all these fine twigs sit tightly in the carpet. Where today here in the garage it's cement, so it's easy to sweep up all the twigs and branches that fell on the ground. Okay, so this part is done, so this half of the tree is done. So now I'm moving over to this side and just making sure that all the branches that I want to remove are removed. Also, sometimes what I do is I do wire some of these trees in winter, but you have to be very careful when wiring in winter, because then there's not a lot of sap in the tree, so some of them might be very brittle and break very easily. So you have to be very, very careful when you're wiring branches in winter. Okay. So moving all the stubs closer to this side. Yeah. So also what I can see on this tree now is I'll probably repot this tree coming spring, just to get to work on this root structure over here, because there's some of the roots that are already above the ground, and I'll have to dig into the soil to see where the second layer of roots are, because I'm going to remove this first part of roots that's above the soil, and then work with that second part of roots. So that's also something. So it's very nice. Well, it's perfect timing to trim the tree now, so that when the right time comes to repot it, I can just repot it, and then I don't have to wait and to worry about the tree stressing out because it's been pruned and repotted at the same time. So now I'm taking some of that stress and spreading it out throughout the growing season instead of having it all at once, because that will just create chaos and set the tree back a bit. Okay, so I'm almost done with this one, and then I'll move on to one of the other ones that I've also bought not too long ago. So just clear that up. If you guys have any questions or topics that you guys want to discuss, you guys are more than welcome to send them through. I see Francis sent through a quick question. Is any fertilizer on nursery stock while they are still in nursery bags? Yes, Franz. So what I do is I do fertilize the trees when they are in nursery bags and while I'm growing them. But I stop fertilizing my trees just before autumn. I know some of the guys continue growing them. So what I do is I water them regularly, as I do with the bonsai trees and with the trees that are in bonsai pots, and I fertilize them as I would any other bonsai trees. So I use, I can actually just grab the bottle at the top here. Sorry, I'm just going to walk out of the camera. Just going to grab this over here. Yes, so I use Seagrow. So I use Seagrow. So I use 5 milliliters to a liter of water, and I use this every 2 weeks, and the trees grow quite well. So yeah, I like using this. I've been using this for about 4 or 5 years now, and since I've been using it, it's been doing great. So yeah, I fertilize them with Seagrow, and yeah, they actually do well. So Uh, and it's also it works. It helps with the development because I mean, once you start fertilizing them with seed grow, it just lets the tree grow up much easier and fast. With seed grow, they grow very fast because it has, yeah, it's all natural. So I like using natural fertilizers as well as pests. I use oleum instead of using any other strong chemicals like Koinor or anything like that. I'm just a bit scared to use any harsh chemicals, so I try to use a lot of natural products. I am a bit finicky about that because obviously when you're working on bonsai and you're using strong chemicals or the fertilizers and chemicals that was based on bigger trees like Koino, you have to dilute it a bit more. And by doing that, there's two concerns for me. So personally, I feel that when you're diluting it, you have to say, okay, this tree is about 10 times smaller than the tree outside, so now you have to dilute that 10 times less. But now, in my mind, doesn't that actually lose its effectiveness? So that's something that I always question. So with the natural products, you don't have to dilute the solution more because the tree is smaller. You can just use it as it is or as it's directed on the bottle. So for me, that's always a fine line. So yeah, to answer your question about fertilizer, I do fertilize the trees while they are in nursery bags. I fertilize all of my trees. The only time I don't fertilize trees is when I've just repotted them, because obviously then you have just repotted your trees, and if you watched my video last week, you would know that I actually add in multicore into my soil mixture. It's a slow release fertilizer, so that stays in the pot for at least 8 months, 6 to 8 months, depending on how often you water it and how often it dissolves. So yeah, so that's the only time. So for the first month or so, I won't fertilize that trees, because obviously once you start fertilizing your tree, the leaves start growing out rapidly, and then your roots might just not keep up with that. And then what I've seen in the past, if you fertilize your trees after you've just repotted them, the canopies will grow at the extreme rate, and then about a month or so down the line, what will happen is there will be more foliage on the tree than the roots can handle. Then the tree suffers setbacks. So that's something that I've experienced. So it might be only on that specific tree, but ever since that happened to me, I've been very careful to fertilize trees after I've repotted them. So what I do is I leave them for at least 2 months, so that they can find their own rhythm, and then I fertilize the trees. Because also you don't want to fertilize trees that are weak. You want to make sure that you fertilize the trees at the right time. So yeah, I do fertilize my trees when they're in nursery bags. And obviously, if the trees are in nursery bags, then the soil mixture in there is a very compact soil. So you just have to keep your eyes on that soil, because I can tell you now that this soil mixture over here is a lot more damp than the soil mixture that I have on these other trees that I've repotted into the growing containers. These into the seedling trays. These bags hold a lot of water, so that's something that you just have to be wary about, that the roots don't rot in the nursery bags. Yeah, so thank you for that question, Franch. Okay. This tree is done. I'm just removing some of the dead twigs that I see on the tree. And here's 2 branches coming out at the exact same place. So I'm just going to choose one of them, and it's going to be this one. I'm going to remove the one that's growing towards the inside and leave the one that's growing to the outside, because then that can create a branch going this way. Then I just have to shorten up these 2 at the side here. Okay, so it looks, yeah. So this tree, as you can see, the structure is a bit more open now than it was before we started. Okay. I'll just remove these on the inside. Here we go. So those are all done. So this branch is too long for where it is now. So I'll remove this one slightly. Just trim it back. So it's actually shorter. Yes, that's done. Done. Yeah. So I've left these two branches at the bottom. I didn't trim them. I trimmed the edges, but I didn't trim them back as hard as I did the top part. This I'm just going to remove. Let me just see it all wet. There we go. Because they're growing into each other at the back of the ear. So I'm just going to remove that. There we go. That's all done. So now I'll just move over to another tree that I also bought in Claremont. Probably get through that one, and then I'm done for the day. Here we go. This is the last one. I'll just move it a bit more that way. I just want to remove all these weeds. So when I'm looking, so now I'm removing all the weeds quickly from this tree. But what I do see on this tree is this tree was actually, I had to backfill the soil on this tree because it was standing on the edge of the roof and the water spilled over the gutter and it actually poured down onto this tree and it spilled out some of the roots, some of the soil out of the pot. So that's also something that I do regularly. So I walk around with a bag filled with bonsai soil mixture, and I just look at bonsai pots that actually need backfilling, because what happens a lot of times is especially when you're watering with a bottle, because we have a lot of water restrictions, I have these 5-liter bottles that I fill with water, and I walk through my garden and I just water the trees, and sometimes you do spill out some of the soil, which is not the end of the world. But what I do is I actually just walk around with a bag after I've watered all my trees and just fill all of that soil back up, because if you leave those roots exposed for too long, they will dry out, harden off, and the finer roots around that thicker root will just die off. So that's something that I do on a regular basis, is just backfill the sand. So you'll see that it has some nursery sand on the one side and some bonsai soil in the middle of the tree. So yeah, so that's just something that I just thought of mentioning quickly. So this is this tree that I bought with the other tree, and I like going to nurseries, small nurseries like in parts that are outside of Cape Town, because there's always these nice small trees that you can buy there for very cheap. And I mean, you plant them into new containers, and they almost instant bonsai trees. So yeah, you just have to trim them a couple of times. And this is also another tree that I'll be planting over into a seedling tray in June, once the buds start opening up. And yeah, I'll be selling these ones off as well. I have way too many trees, so yeah, me working on them as regularly as possible, trying to stay ahead of all the work in the enclosure. But yeah, it does tend to creep up. See, this one has a lot of dead leaves, dead branches on it. You see why? Because all the dead branches are on this side, so it could be that this side is not receiving enough sunlight. So I'll try and open up the structure as much as possible, so I can get some more light in there. Okay, let's move these ones over here. Okay, these are all done. So probably the last tree that I'm trimming for this stream, and then I'll be done, because I see it's almost an hour now. I don't want to keep you guys up too long. And then Frans, thank you very much for all the questions. I do appreciate it. It's nice to actually have somebody not just sitting there and viewing, but actually engaging as well. Just makes it a bit better, because obviously there's only so much things you can talk about. But I really do want to be a bit more engaging with you guys. And if you guys have any questions, yeah, feel free to send them through. I might not know all the answers, but I would be able to direct you into the right place. If I don't know it, I'll probably reply to you and send you some documentation on if you want. Yeah, so that's it. Okay, so it's 11 o'clock now. So I'll end the stream, but I'll continue working on this tree. And once I'm done, I'll take a few photos of the trees and post that onto my Facebook page. So thank you very much for spending this hour with me during my live stream. See, my dog is also becoming a bit restless. He's coming this way now. So yeah, so thank you very much for your support. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to send them through. And yeah, I'll answer them as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for all the support, guys. I'll see you again next week. Let me just end the stream. There we go.